Bloods has taken the television world by storm, and with the cast being worth so much in terms of money, we expected nothing less. We mean the show is entering its 11th season. Has it been that long already? Anyway, we wanted to have a glance back at season 11 to get you ready for season 12. This video is all about what happened during season 11. We hope you enjoy it. But before we get into the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel with notifications on so you don't miss any of the new videos we post. Episode 1. Frank and City Council Speaker Regina Thomas, Whoopi Goldberg, clashed over recent protests against police brutality. Danny and Baez worryingly vanished during their pursuit of a dangerous killer. Anthony, Jamie, and Jamie's nephew Joe all joined in the hunt to find the two. After they were finally located, an injured Baez joined the Reagans Sunday dinner. Eddie helped a young woman whose father was misidentified among a number of coronavirus victims, which inspired her to attend her father's parole hearing. Episode 2. Danny and Baez worked with Jamie to convict a notorious drug lord after a witness that was set to testify against him was killed. Danny was convinced the drug lord's defense attorney broke the law and shared the witness list with his client. Aaron's boss was arrested and dismissed for corruption. Meanwhile, Detective Joe Hill thwarted a kidnapping while off duty, and it was caught on camera, leading to Garrett wanting to make him the face of the NYPD. This forced Frank, Joe, and Joe's mother Paula to face a difficult decision about revealing Joe's family ties. When Joe and Paula joined the Reagan Sunday dinner, Frank learned that someone had dug up Joe's birth certificate. Episode 3. After Joe Hill was revealed to be related to the Reagan family, he had a tough time with other cops in his squad, culminating in a fistfight. He did not show up for Sunday dinner to meet Nikki and Jack. Meanwhile, Danny was visited by a young woman who showed him a video of her grandfather being pushed down a flight of stairs. Danny updated Jamie on the matter and discreetly worked the case with him, as Jamie reported himself to IAB. They find out the young woman's brother was responsible, having committed the act as a gang initiation trial. Also, Aaron and Anthony received gift-wrapped evidence from gangster Donnie Hassett, Mark Declan, regarding a mob case, but it turned out to be a setup. Episode 4. Officer Ray Flores was racked with guilt over his partner being shot while the two accosted a robbery suspect, and later said to Jamie that he wanted to kill the suspect. When the suspect ended up shot in the head, Flores was investigated by IAB, but Jamie was convinced that his officer acted on his claim. Aaron faced a dilemma when a man convicted of vehicular homicide in a drunk driving incident protected some children in a heroic act while out on bail. She consulted the victim's mother to make a case that the convicted man should get a lighter sentence. Elsewhere, Frank was conflicted when Detective Allison Mullaney, Allie Stroker, wanted to continue actively working cases despite being confined to a wheelchair after being injured on the job. Episode 5. Eddie and Rachel, Lauren Patton, were heralded for their bravery for stopping an active shooter until a civilian came forward to accuse them of faking the incident. Meanwhile, Frank pried into a decades-long history of cash payments his father, Henry, has been making to an unknown recipient. Also, Danny and Baez investigated a man's murder and find the man's two sons, each accusing the other of the crime. Elsewhere, Sean's high school locker was vandalized with anti-police graffiti. Episode 6. Frank dealt with a police captain in the Bronx whose precinct had growing crime and fewer arrests. Meanwhile, Danny faced backlash from Baez and Internal Affairs over a tough call he made in the field. Also, Jamie assigned Eddie and Rachel a social worker to ride along with them as part of a pilot program, and Eddie was surprised at the worker's effectiveness on their first domestic call. Elsewhere, Aaron opposed a criminal being released due to new bail laws and crossed her new boss with the way she handled things after the man was back on the street. Episode 7. After Danny's neighbor was injured in a drive-by shooting, he and the investigating detective were at odds over their differing methods. Meanwhile, Jamie's friend from law school came to him with evidence on a cold case. Skeptical, Jamie brought it to Aaron and Anthony's attention, and they they worked together to determine who the guilty party was. Elsewhere, Douglas McKenzie, Mike Carlson, a detective who resigned a year prior, revealed information about a suspected crime ring to Frank. Despite Garrett and Gormley's apprehension and trusting McKenzie, Frank ultimately asked McKenzie to rejoin the force. Episode 8. The new district attorney shadowed Aaron as they tried to convince a scared eyewitness to reveal the identity of the person who shot her boyfriend. Meanwhile, another victim of the serial killer, who previously held Danny and Baez hostage, was found. With the location of the body in dispute, Danny agreed to work the case in conjunction with a Nassau County detective. Also, Jamie arrested an intrusive reporter who appeared at a series of store lootings. Frank got involved when Attorney General Robert Lewis, Michael Imperioli, asked him to get the charges against the reporter dropped. Episode 9. A man with whom Baez was briefly romantically involved was murdered on her front lawn. Unbeknownst to Baez, the man had a fiancée. Her alibi was solid, but a camera app Baez installed on her front door showed that the fiancé was responsible. Danny made it in time to stop the woman from killing Baez as well. Elsewhere, Frank called Dr. Alex Dawson, the therapist who previously helped Danny, to meet with his team when Gormley was shown to be highly stressed. Frank himself admitted to the therapist he was struggling to see past the scoreboard of his own fallen friends and family members. Episode 10. Frank asked Aaron to liaise between him and New York Governor Mendez regarding pension policy reform he privately backed but couldn't publicly support because it put him at odds with police rank and file. Meanwhile, Danny and Baez become enmeshed in the world of competitive gaming when a high-profile video game streamer was murdered. Elsewhere, Eddie and Witten suspect a live-in nanny was being abused after she approached them on the street for help. Episode 11. Frank took matters into his own hands to save Gormley's career when decades-old excessive force complaints against him became public knowledge. Meanwhile, Danny and Baez learned to be allies to the transgender community when a transgender woman was found murdered in a dumpster. Elsewhere, Eddie was assaulted by a man who hated cops and was just released on bail for a similar assault. Episode 12. Baker was assaulted on the street, and the incident inspired Baker to seriously consider returning to fieldwork. Meanwhile, Erin asked her ex-husband, Jack Boyle, to represent a defendant she was prosecuting in a gun possession case. Jack bet that he would get to take Erin on a romantic weekend if his client was innocent, but Erin countered by saying Jack had to attend Sunday dinner if the defendant was guilty. It turned out the gun was used in an attempted murder of a couple that Danny and Baez were investigating, with a friend of Aaron's suspect pulling the trigger. Jack joined the family for Sunday dinner despite winning his bet with Aaron about his client being innocent. Episode 13. Jamie rode with a rookie in his squad who had been shoved by a perp. Jamie recognized the perp as a homeless veteran who saved Danny's life in Fallujah and told his rookie to cut her loose without explanation. Danny reunited with his combat friend and convinced her to enter rehab after several unsuccessful tries by Jamie in the past. Meanwhile, Danny and Baez disagreed while investigating the murder of a controversial comedy club owner when the leading suspect was Emmett Fells, Ben Bailey, one of Danny's favorite comedians whose alcoholism had led to troubled times. While Danny wanted to look into other potential suspects, Baez believed Danny was too starstruck to accept the evidence against Fells. Episode 14. A quote of Garrett's that appeared to say the NYPD can do better was listed on the front page of a local paper. Garrett refused to take it back. Meanwhile, a jogger discovered a dead homeless man in a park. Danny and Baez learned this was his third such discovery and grew suspicious, later finding he was a prominent presence in anti-homeless protests as a former politician. Reviewing the video footage again led the detectives toward a homeless woman with mental health issues as being responsible. Anthony was mistaken for a mafioso at a bar when a man named Lenny, Louis Mastillo, asked him to kill his unfaithful wife for him. Lenny decided not to follow through with this plan, but Anthony later confronted the man who was having the affair. Episode 15. Shockwaves rippled through the Reagan family when Danny and Maria followed up on a tip about the sale of illegal guns, only to find recently discovered family member and NYPD detective Joe Hill, Will Hockman, making the purchase along with an accomplice. An angry Frank met with ATF field agent Rachel Weber, Gloria Rubin, who was aware that Joe was working undercover for ATF but did not inform the NYPD that Joe had returned to New York. Danny also learned that Jamie was aware of Joe's undercover status and is acting as a contact, but did not tell the rest of the Reagans. Episode 16. The Reagans were relieved to learn that Joe was not in the car at the time of the explosion, but nonetheless realized his cover must have been blown. Danny and Jamie followed leads left by Joe to help bring down the gun-running outfit. Joe and Ty sent Danny and Jamie up to New England, culminating in the four of them finding a large stash of weapons at a New Hampshire farm. The gun-running group tailed them to this location, and a shootout ensued. Most of the criminals were killed. Ty sacrificed his life to save Joe's, and the gun-running leader escaped. That's it for today. Thank you for watching. Until we see you again, take care.